then obviously I took on.
Okay, now.
Okay, good evening and hello everybody. We apologize firstly in true African style, African time, with some technical glitches. So welcome for those that are going to be joining us this evening, and once again just apologies for any of the delays. So for those of you that are joining us tonight or will at some point watch this, it is truly our honor to host our first official virtual book launch. And today especially, which happens to be World Book Day, International World Book Day. So we feel really honored here at Harry's and the Harry's group of companies to be able to celebrate not just books and authors and writing, but local authors. And today we have Roy Hewett on the hot seat, who's going to be launching his book, which I think we're all aware in these times is a very, very topical issue. It's titled Pandemic Papers. So welcome, Roy.
Welcome. Thank you.
So again, thank you to all of you for joining us. We feel, that this is the start of many great and big things. So for those of you that do know Roy, he's from East London. He's very well known here, and I'm not going to go into too many introductions because I think many of you are friends of his, and we will share some information in the bio and along the way and help Roy to publicize his books more. So I feel honored to be holding one of the first hot off the press copies of Pandemic Papers. And so, as I said, such a topical issue and topic for us to be talking about right now. So I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction and something to intrigue us to get us started. Because the format of this is that I will be asking Roy a couple of questions about the book, and he may do a reading or two, and we will maybe even be taking some questions later on. So we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to read something from Roy's prologue, which just tells us a bit about where we are, or just a little bit of introduction to what his book is about. So he starts by saying that the fundamental rule of all nature on planet Earth is that there is a balance. Survival needs must be met, and respect for the environment and fellow life forms manifested. Man's dance on this planet has incorporated many steps, sometimes slow, respectful, and nurturing, often jarring, unrhythmic, and destructive. As the superior species, the health and sustainability of the host has always been in our hands. Many questions derive from this ecological relationship. Have our greed, horrendous exploitation of all resources, and abject cruelty to other life forms dealt Earth a mortal blow? Or have we discovered ourselves from our host to the extent that we need to be removed? Some very topical questions that you've asked there, Roy. So let me just ask you, what motivated and inspired you to write this book?
Poonam, that's a really good question, and I appreciate it, and I'm going to answer that. But I just want to start by saying that I feel really privileged to be a part of the journey that Harry's printers have embarked on, particularly their mission to look after authors, encourage them, nurture them, and give them opportunities such as the one I'm being given right now. I really do appreciate it. Right, Pandemic Papers and what it's about and what motivated me. We've all had a terrible shock to the system. I don't think anybody can dispute that. Every single person on this planet has been affected to a greater or lesser extent by COVID-19. There's been a traumatic change to our way of life. I felt a strong need, because I love writing and I love things literary, and I just felt this compelling need to research, which I also enjoy, and record aspects of what was happening to our world. Some may debate this view, but I believe this pandemic is the biggest, most impactful, lifestyle-changing challenge ever. what I wrote, March 2020 will go down in history as a time when our real world was turned on its head and our peoples confined to a surreal existence never hitherto experienced on this scale. Many believe that COVID-19 represents the biggest challenge faced by mankind in recorded history. The virus that started in Wuhan, China, has changed the world, and most commentators contend that life on our planet will never be the same again. And that's what is more fundamental, what is more important to humankind than that.
And so maybe a bit of a difficult question for you, or maybe not so much. You know, with COVID fatigue so very real at the moment, why do you feel people should read your book?
Right. I'd like to say a little bit about the format of the book, and then I will get to answering your question, I hope, and if I miss that, please just remind me.
I will do that.
The book is written in two sections, which reflect the two waves that hit us. In a way, and with implications that we have never experienced, nor could have imagined. It takes us on a journey that covers the full range of what could be found in my research on COVID-19, and I did a lot of that, without going into the formidable medical research and discoveries that are ongoing regarding this pandemic. The first wave consists of 10 papers with the usual introductory sections like prologue, introduction, and perspective. And then there's a conclusion with a section called PS, the Fallout. Many questions are being asked at an ever-increasing rate. This is an excerpt from our views. At that ever-increasing rate, and the demand for answers has become a groundswell that will harbor no attempts to be muffled. And then, compounding the complexity, hysteria versus respectful adherence to lockdown protocols, fake news, and clashes of medical views have fueled the confusion and rising anger as economic realities are hitting home. Conspiracy theories are gaining traction, and the role of certain news channels has come under scrutiny. Growing numbers are crying foul. Then the second wave, because we all thought, well, back to normality. It's just a question of time, and this will be a bad memory. Then the second wave hit us. I did 6 papers on that while I was in the tranquil atmosphere of the Wild Coast, Ulungula, where I stay in Rondavo with no electricity, a little battery to have sunlight, no interruption from cell phones and so on, and I was able to do a lot of writing on this particular topic. So the second wave consists of 6 papers with an introduction and an epilogue. The context. Lockdown provided much time because I believe that context just about always is the most important aspect of whatever's going on. Whatever people do, how they behave, what they say, context is central. The context in this case, lockdown provided much time for comprehensive research across all media. What is striking, what really struck me, and I try to incorporate them, are the many viewpoints, the different leadership approaches, the confusion, fake news, conspiracy theories, corruption, a bad one, religious explanations, end times and Armageddon. The list goes on. There are powerful and clever quotes, in my view, many in the poem genre, consistent with the literary creativity that flourishes when the times are really tough. I'm a firm believer in, and I think the proliferation of on the topic of COVID-19, so many things have been written. And in my research, I came across some excellent pieces, and I've incorporated quite a few into my pandemic papers. The common themes in life, I think there are usually themes in relationships or whatever. The common themes are generally warnings against man's practices and urging respect for nature and all life on our planet. Now, that was my response to your question, but your question was really, with COVID fatigue very real at the moment, why should people read your book?
Yes.
So should I launch into that?
Please do.
Or are you happy with that? No question, we are all suffering from COVID fatigue to a greater or lesser extent. And it is debilitating, demotivating, an assault on the well-being of many, health-wise, financially, and psychologically. But it is still here, and we don't know for how long. So I think it's important to be conscious of all of its aspects and to try to understand. My book is an attempt to reflect as many of those aspects as possible. What I believe is a defining excerpt from the book. We are caught up in times that have incalculable historical civic significance in the journey of mankind, almost certainly defining for the rest of our existence. Could there be a more powerful reason?
And I agree with you 100%. So, but I think for the people that may just have a bit of doubt in their mind, who do you feel your book is targeted or aimed at?
That's a very good question too. You do ask good questions. Anybody who's keen to understand the full picture of this life-changing pandemic, I think it's targeted at them largely. And then those who take a keen interest in global events of mind-boggling magnitude. I think that basically covers the target group.
Thank you for that, Warren. I think, as you've said, as much as the COVID fatigue is so real, you've just said that it's here to stay. And, we don't know. I think many people have thought by now, a year later, a couple of, a couple of months later, it's still very, very real. You look at what's happening in India and other places in the world, and it's very scary, In your book, you also talk about, and I really like this one passage where you said that it's in times of world crises that the best and the worst traits of our species come to the fore. And just in your opinion, what do you feel, in a South African context, I mean, we can talk about this forever, but what do you feel has been the best and maybe possibly the worst shown in these times of COVID?
Once again, challenging, but important. In my view, human nature tends to be exposed when the going gets really tough. And we see many examples of the extremes. Certainly among the best has been our frontline health workers and carers who have done invaluable and highly risky work with patients during the crisis times and beyond. The intentions of the volunteers who supplied food to those in dire need was superb too. That's the one side. That's the positive side, in my view. Then, theft of food from those donations was mind-numbing. It was just beyond the pale. One cannot conceive of what goes on in people's minds if they can do something like that. And then the corruption that reared its ugly head in the procurement and supply of PPEs was grotesque. From the book, what I wrote, it is astounding how many businesses have miraculously developed skills that bear no relation to their original zones of operation. The jury is out on their authenticity, sustainability, and integrity as they appear to be trying to make a quick buck during the most trying of times. Of course, the fake news that proliferated reflected extremely poorly on human nature.
Okay, thanks for that, Boy. And like I said, I think it's a topic everyone has their own opinions on, and something we can definitely talk about for a long time. I think if anything, what many people have said that they during this time they've definitely learned a lot about themselves. And I think as a human species, when we look at how we've evolved, it's quite interesting to think that we've come such a long way when you compare COVID to the Spanish flu, and people look at all these facts and what's come, you know, and how much quicker it spread because of global travel and just the way that the world has evolved, as I said. But on page 11 of the book, you have a very interesting quote that actually took me by surprise. And then you actually say that for all the advances we've made against infectious disease, our very growth has made us more vulnerable, not less, to microbes that evolve 40 million times faster than humans do. And that little fact just took me completely by surprise to think that, you know, we think we've come a long way, but yet there's so much more powerful forces out there, you know. So just in your viewpoint, can you just elaborate on that for us, please?
I'm not going to enjoy doing that, even though it's not the greatest sort of reality related to this. But I just want to sidetrack for a moment. I have a connection, stroke friend, but it's through my involvement at Bula on the Wild Coast. The lady who is running the show for a year because the folk responsible go on a sabbatical every 5 years. She's a very jacked up lady, and some won't necessarily go into names specifically, but her partner is an associate professor in infectious diseases. And I don't know if people can see that I'm in a bit of a risk situation here from a fall at Bula, but he is a qualified doctor, and he diagnosed this thing properly. It was confirmed here. But in his sort of experience of and dealing with infectious diseases, he does not necessarily agree with all of the points that I've made in the book, but that's part of life, and we can chat about things. But I do quote him, and it's quite an interesting read in my view, on the ivermectin, which became quite a controversial issue for a while, and possibly still is, because he is, should I say his name? I'm not sure about it. I don't think you'll mind because he's quoted in the book, so his name is Tom Boyles, and he is a highly respected man in the field. And this ivermectin thing, I asked him if he's prepared to give me a quote, and I asked if I may use it in the book. He said yes, and I sent it to my friends on various chat groups from my two old schools. And that stimulated a whole lot of the debate. It was very interesting, but I won't go into all of that now. But to answer your question, and your question was, why, as a species, are we more rather than less vulnerable? And you didn't touch on the possibility there. Well, it's our rapid population growth. The concentration in densely populated areas and cities. Increasingly rapid movement globally, because that's just increasing at an exponential rate, have made the spread of infectious diseases so much more acute. Quoted in the book by Brian Walsh, he's a futures writer, and I think you referred to his quote a little earlier. As COVID-19 is painfully demonstrating, our interconnected global economy both helps spread new infectious diseases and, with its long supply chains, is uniquely vulnerable to the disruption that they can cause. The ability to get to nearly any spot in the world in 20 hours or fewer and pack a virus along with our carry-on luggage allows new diseases to emerge and to grow when they might have died out in the past. For all the advances we've made against infectious disease, our very growth has made us, and you quoted this, so I'm just going to repeat it. I think it will have more impact anyway. For all the advances we've made against infectious disease, our very growth has made us more vulnerable, not less, to microbes that evolve 40 million times faster than humans do. Very significant.
So, I mean, again, very staggering fact, and thank you for just reiterating and reinforcing it again, because I think The next question is something that's a bit controversial and you could be shot down because there's many people that still believe that the COVID virus was manufactured in a lab in China somewhere. I'll reserve my personal opinion, but I'm going to ask you what would you say to someone that believes that?
Well, I'd first start by saying that I have a number of friends who range from ultra-conservative to highly liberal. And the differences of opinion on the various chats, friend chat groups, and quite big chat groups with friends overseas all over the show, is staggering. And there are those who firmly believe that this is part of an international plot. Now, I'm also going to reserve my personal view on it. So I'm going to say that is a really significant question, and the answer isn't easy, nor is it easily authenticated. Fake news plays a role, as does seemingly suppressed information from China, because there seems to be, judging by what has appeared in the press on numerous occasions, there seems to be a lot of information that's been suppressed. So I ask myself, is it possible to come to a clear picture decision on what actually happened there? But then that's just what's in my mind. And my logical thinking side, the rational thinking side, says one has to, and it's fed by some things I've read, one has to make decisions like that, or come to conclusions on issues like that, on a scientific sort of basis, with actual empirical scientific testing. So, however, the latest information released by the investigating agency affiliated to WHO, the World Health Organization, suggests that the source was natural. Also, the news release would have let us have it. The release said, the novel SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus that emerged in the city of Wuhan, China last year, and has since caused a large-scale COVID-19 epidemic and spread to more than 70 other countries, is the product of natural evolution, according to findings published today in the journal Nature Medicine. So it's an intriguing one, but I don't think people who even read that, or if they might have read it, there are lots of people who wouldn't be swayed by that. I reserve my particular opinion.
Completely, and I often believe in really asking these questions in this interview or this book launch, but I actually believe sometimes in the situation like this, we often left with more questions than answers, actually. And I think, as we've both done, we've reserved our judgment. And I mean, for the viewers out there, we ask you to think about that if you haven't already. And so leading on to the next question, which actually you've pulled into it already, you've touched on the fake news, you've touched on the conspiracy theories, and you refer to something called the corona bandwagon in your book. And so I just wanted to ask, what is your take? So as much as we reserve our judgment, sometimes it is interesting to just see what is it that you do believe. So what is your take on the conspiracy theories, fake news, and the corona bandwagon, as you refer to it in your book?
Also a good question. My view is that this is and my strong feeling is that this is a shadowy area that is fraught with authenticity issues and seemingly suspicious motives. My take in the book regarding conspiracy theories is, amidst the burgeoning and seemingly endless supply of conspiracy theories that cause untold confusion and quite often misdirected anger and hatred, one stands out in stark effect. The claim that the coronavirus was manufactured in a laboratory in Wuhan. Well, we've addressed that. This assertion has been propagated in numerous press reports and most arms of social media, and the fallout has been huge. In situations of this magnitude globally, it is always prudent to rely on scientifically tested evidence from experts. Okay, so in summary, an analysis of public genome sequence data from SARS-CoV-2 and related viruses found no evidence that the virus was made in a laboratory or otherwise engineered. Regarding fake news, and then one of the less admirable characteristics of human nature inevitably manifests itself ubiquitously and very disturbingly in fake news. We've touched on that to a certain extent. Unsubstantiated speculation and attention-seeking nonsense. It is a very sad and damning indictment of the integrity of anyone who would knowingly spread false information or cause fear and panic to feed their incomprehensible need for self-perceived power. Disconcertingly, many are guilty. Then the corona bandwagon is a human nature-related one. From the book, then the corona bandwagon has taken on a life of its own. This seems to be in the nature of major events and programs that incorporate man nationally and globally. Innumerable organizations, groups, and individuals have emerged as experts and disseminators of information and advice. It is astounding how many businesses have miraculously developed skills we said earlier. The jury is out on their authenticity, sustainability, and integrity as they appear to be trying to make that quick buck that I mentioned earlier. That's my response there.
Thanks, Roy. And so, as much as we can touch on the bad things, and sometimes we tend to focus, or most people tend to focus a lot more on the negative than the positive. And in your book, you refer to it, and of course, as South Africans, we all believe this, that, especially after us winning the rugby, that we are stronger together. And so what does that mean to you, Roy?
My involvement on the Wild Coast has taught me a lot more than I knew about Ubuntu. I had obviously heard about it, and I had a certain conception of what it was, but I've seen it, let's call it in its, or certainly in my experience, in its purest form that I've come across. So my response there is, once again, it comes down to human nature and its fallibilities and the concept of Ubuntu. The context in the book, I believe, is reflected in. But then there's the very real and unavoidable role of human nature, sometimes predictable, often embarrassing, and always hugely significant. Self-interest and self-preservation seem to be the default considerations for most of us when the challenges of life and lifestyle threaten. It requires a difficult quantum leap to escape the natural selfishness that consumes most of us, and to adopt the true values of Ubuntu and genuine concern for others. There may just be, that definitely is, a very powerful message conveyed to all of us during this pandemic. We are stronger together. It may be argued that we are being retaught the basics of a healthy and selfless consideration for others, and the real meaning of true empathy.
Thank you, Roy. And I think it's something that I resonate with a lot. You know, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we tend to so often focus on the negative and don't realize how, you know, just the human nature, sometimes when people just take a step back and we realize at the end of the day just how much in the same boat we often can be. You know, we all come from different backgrounds, different colors, or different whatever it is. But, you know, when we put that aside, at the end of the day, we all need to breathe, we all need to eat, we all need to sleep, we do all of that other stuff that we do. Yeah, so I agree with that, and I really think we are stronger together. And so we've touched on it a lot, and this is the last question that I have for you. And we've, you know, you've spoken about it as well in this last question, but human nature is something that is referred to a lot in your book. So maybe as an end note, in your opinion, do you think that it's our saving grace or our biggest downfall?
This question is actually very closely related to question 5. And just in case anybody's forgotten what question 5 was, I'm just going to remind you quickly. The best and worst traits of our species come to the fore. What do you feel is the best and worst that has been shown during this time in the South African context? Well, on the positive side, the unquenchable human spirit that prevails when the chips are really down is what has taken mankind through innumerable challenges over the ages. And those are all summarized in the section of the book. This is a saving grace. On the negative side, those who seek self-enrichment will operate with no sense of moral compass or regard for others. This is clearly a downfall. As stated in the book, as in most projects, developments, and undertakings of humankind, there are usually many outstanding and value-adding aspects. But human nature is such that negative practices invariably manifest themselves when opportunities arise. Chances and abuses of systems are an unfortunate reality of the human condition. And then a question that humans should ask ourselves collectively: will we continue down the limited path of the mechanical mind, or will we tune into ultimate intelligence, the same intelligence that allows blood to flow through our veins, bees to pollinate flowers, birds to fly south, salmon to spawn, whales to migrate, caterpillars to become butterflies, the earth to rotate, the moon to orbit, and the rest of nature to function perfectly of its own accord?
Thank you, Roy. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of our formal part of the question answer session. Roy, just on your side, do you have any last comments or any last things that you'd just like to say?
I'd like to say that I enjoyed writing this book. It was stimulating, it was enlightening. I found the quotes really uplifting and sobering, and sometimes quite depressing. And it was a growth experience beyond the norm for me.
Thanks, Roy. So as I said, I think we've come to the end of tonight's session, but there's just one last thing that I want to read that Roy's got in his prologue, and it says that whatever constitutes one's life view, the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic has compelled us to look at ourselves, re-evaluate established patterns, adapt to unexpected circumstances, and contemplate an uncertain future. Our comfort zone has been rocked to its foundations. And I think for me, that little paragraph just sort of summarizes where we are right now. As we've said, we don't know for how much longer this is going to be around. We've got the vaccines out, and they came, and they stopped, and it's, the blood clots and all of that stuff. And so, we also know people who have the vaccine, who had the virus come up. So we are in this very uncertain times. And so I think just through this conversation, I'm sure you can see that Roy has really researched this book really, really thoroughly, really well. And despite the fact that it is about the COVID virus, I think for me, what really came across is that it's really about us as humans, us as a species, the earth, the bigger picture of where we are. And so I encourage you as an avid reader to please get your hands on a copy of one of these. I think it's really uplifting, not uplifting, enlightening is the word I'm wanting to use. And thank you, Roy. Thank you for taking the time to research this. Like you said, I think there's just so much information out there. We don't know who to believe. Governments, institutions, those are the things that we're questioning. Even, we're really getting to know each other as people within our own families, where these differences of opinions are had, where, as we've both just done throughout this at times, reserved our judgment. So, again, we ask you to just be kind to each other, to be kind to yourselves, and be gentle with yourselves in these times, because we are in very uncertain and unsettling times. So this book can really help for you to get a bit of insight that I believe is very well researched. And I think on behalf of the Harris Group, we want to thank you for supporting us, for being a member of our team as such, helping us grow the publishing side. And we feel very honored that you are our first virtual book launch. So thank you, Roy, and all the best on the future of your book. And just so that a bit of an advert, the books are available through yourself, am I correct?
Yes.
Through yourself, and we will also be selling them at our store here at Harry's Photos in Vincent, in East London, Donald Road. And we are working on an ebook solution, which we will announce in short time to come, and looking at a platform to also assist our authors. So we hope to have you on very soon as well. So please grab a coffee, and thanks again for joining us.
Will you allow me to read a few of the quotes? I'd just like to indicate the quality of the quotes. Obviously, there's no doubt that the isolation and deprivation of lockdown stimulate creativity, especially in the medium of writing. Three of the most powerful pieces in the book, I feel, are, I don't know if you agree, but something invisible came and put everything in its place. Suddenly the price of gasoline went down, pollution also went down. People started to have more time, so much time that they do not know what to do with it. Parents are spending time with their kids as a family. Work is no longer a priority, or traveling, or social life either. Suddenly we silently see within ourselves and understand the value of the words solidarity, love, strength, empathy, and faith. In an instant, we realize that we are all in the same boat, rich and poor, that the supermarket shelves are empty and the hospitals are full. New cars and old cars also stand in the garages, simply because nobody can get out. Empty streets, less pollution, clean air, the land also breathes. The human returns to his origins, realizing that with or without money, the important thing is to survive. Today, health is the main thing, even in spite of wanting to have or possess it. It took 6 days for the universe to establish the social equality that was said to be impossible. Fear invaded everyone. At least this happened to help realize the vulnerability of the human being. Nature is forcing us to clean up the mess made by ourselves. I think this is particularly powerful. Our overthrown gods, money, sports, fame, politics. What the coronavirus is teaching us, our best protection is God. Our best refuge, home. Our best company, family. Our real time, today. Nature's call, stop us. Its message, wait, respect. We are not gods, we are not kings. We do not have the power of controlling everything. We are part of the whole, fragile, brittle, and vulnerable something. Part of the whole, something that we wanted to dominate, and today is telling us, stop, breathe, respect. Go back to the basics, to the essentials, that the peace of your soul guide you towards what you are, the creation. And that's a person who calls herself Temi17. I thought it's particularly powerful. And then there are a couple of others, please bear with me. From somebody who calls himself or herself Zen. We are all in this together if we can find it within us to open our hearts in a compassionate way. If we can set the intention to take skillful and positive actions, then we will be more able to transform the situation and act for the greater good of all beings. Here are some questions you can reflect on. How have I treated this challenging time so far? How have I suffered by my own attitude and reaction to it? How can I make the most of this? What hidden gift might I find in this situation? Let's actively look for the good and appreciate the blessing of an ordinary day. Appreciate the smell of an orange, the night sky. What if, instead of looking at the situation in despair, we looked at the possibilities for creativity and new ways of living that are emerging out of the situation? Who knows what hidden blessings will be born in this time? How can we use this time to retreat, reflect, and to re-evaluate our lives? Perhaps it's the return to a simple life, a slowing down for a time, until the pandemic passes and we get busy again. May we all learn to accept things as they are in each moment. May we all be free from inner and outer harm. May we all make wise choices for the sake of all beings. May all beings be healthy and safe. Stay home if you can, and stay safe with love. And then finally, another powerful and sobering view for all of us who yearn to go back to normal. Sobering, I believe. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. What an indictment of mankind. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. Sonia Renee Taylor, I take my hat off to you. And I wrote at the end, Venus. Done. Gewilling walk.
And so I think we officially have come to the end of this book launch, virtual book launch. Roy, thank you once again for enlightening us. I think it's truly been a lovely evening. I feel very honored and privileged to have had this time with you, to have been given an insight and a preview to your book. And yeah, like I said before, we wish you well. And please, we encourage you all to buy the book, to support Roy. Please share this talk, please follow our pages, please support Harry's as we support local authors, and let's celebrate World Book Day, despite these times that we find ourselves in and the challenges that we face. Let's remember what Roy has just read. Get back to basics, and just remember who we are and who we can be. So thank you once again. Go well, be safe, have a good long weekend, everyone, for those who are celebrating, and happy school holidays to the school kids that are having this little break, and good night. Thank you.